Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. I'm here with an old friend of Forbidden Planet, my fellow former long-time journalist, Mr. Kieron Gillen. How you doing,
Oh,
mate?
great to be here.
Always great to have you here, and particularly this year when you're working on so many just epic projects across the board, both for yourself and in this case for our mutual pals at Marvel Comics. So, mate, what can you tell me about Axe Judgment Day?
Well, wow. What to possibly say? Basically, Marvel came into me to say, "Hey, Kieron, you got any idea? We what we think that there's room for some kind of Avengers X-Men Eternal event, and obviously you're writing the Eternals. What do you think?" And I went away and I came back with this. And basically, I've been doing comics for a while, but it's quite weird. The one thing I haven't done, I haven't actually written an event, which is kind of like I've just never been in the right place for it, I guess, or they hate me. But like it's definitely one of those. But I've been involved in so many, so I was kind of like wanted to come and do a story that was like everything everything I love in events, which is scale, big emotions, huge ideas, all your favorite characters in it, and just try to also really not solve problems, that's overstating it, try to do it right. And that sounds, what I mean, like the stuff that always
Yeah.
bugs me as a reader, just don't do it. And then everything sounds incredibly basic, but that's right. So what I wanted to do, Avengers versus Eternals versus X-Men, the versus is slightly deceptive. What it is it comes out the story. Like if you've been reading Eternals or X-Men, or Avengers, it will come out, it's been building for years. We've taken these threads, this animosity between them, like the X-Men's immortality they've been keeping secret is now coming up. The stories though about the in the Eternals, they've been taken over by Druig, who is basically a slime of a man, and he's trying to find ways to cement his power. And the Avengers have been kept out of it, but at the same time, they're living inside a Celestial, literally one of the gods of the Eternals. So they've all these threads together, and that's where we had Act One. And Act One is very much the Eternals or go to war in the X-Men over the nature of immortality, which is all that sort of internal thing. That's the setup, and that's partially like there's a lot of heroes versus heroes kind of crossovers. And what's interesting, I think, Act One is, oh no, the Eternals are very clearly the bad guys here. They're kind of like biological sentinels almost. And there's definitely good Eternals trying to stop it, but really they're an enormous apocalyptic threat like the X-Men have not really seen. I mean, like when you meet Uranus, he's like a monster. And that's Act One. And then it builds to Act Two, and then things become, what's the word? The big philosophical meaty stuff comes in then. Like literally from the first page, you'll realize, oh wait, Kieron's off in it again. But like, it's that kind of like, I always love, it's what events I've loved. I've always loved, if I choose a teenage event I really loved, it would be Infinity Gauntlet. And what I always loved about Starlin, he's writing about stuff. He's writing about, yes, he's doing literally some of the best fights I've ever seen, like and murdering all the heroes in the Marvel universe in an incredibly memorable way. But he's also going, okay, what is power and philosophy, and what do these things really mean? And you've got the Thanos, this romancing figure of death, and Thanos is in it, but that kind of spirit of let's do a story about something. Because like for me, superheroes are kind of like, okay, I wouldn't say like what's the point of them, but they're kind of like Judgment Day is kind of like got the implication of justify yourself, and that's kind of where we all head. Like the X-Men and the Eternals and the Avengers all in a position where they have to kind of justify themselves, and that's where we go in the second act. And then the third act is enormous, and I can't really talk about it. But you know what I mean? It's like I just want to basically, it's my symphonic love song to the Marvel universe. That's the idea.
How beautifully put. I mean, that's what I love about your work within the Marvel universe. It is indeed those big Stalin-esque swings. The macro picture of what it's like to have a universe of superheroes, the mythology of it, if you will. Those great overarching themes, which it seems to me that once you're dealing with something as essentially as ridiculous and epic in sweep as a universe of superheroes, that's surely the only way to approach it. And you can go small scale, of course, but for you specifically as a writer, I think it's such an interesting approach.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I mentioned Stalin, and the word I'm going to use is poetry, which is not really a word which sells seats. But, there's a poetry to superheroes. But at the same time, one of the things I mean, the Marvel universe for me, like slightly contrary to what you said actually, but like if I can't imagine someone going and having a slice of pizza, it's not the Marvel universe. Like you've got the Silver Surfer, but you've also got someone grabbing a burrito. Like those are the two things, and that's kind of that's definitely something in Judgment Day. Like the more you go, there's kind of a Greek chorus of normal humans commentating on the events. It's like, and it's not quite Dark Knight Returns.
Mate, that's such a wonderful way to put it. I love it. That is it. That's hot wired to the very core of the Marvel universe. That's brilliant.
Thank you. But like, it's definitely like, so in other words, you're getting to see the incredible cosmic stuff happening and the big events and the superheroic moments. But you've also got the kind of like, I always think it's like, what does it feel like to watch Spider-Man fly past your window?
Yeah.
So like, that's the other thing we've got as well. So that's like the difference between, I always describe like writing an event. This is the way I think of it now is you're trying to write the Marvel universe simultaneously. So instead of just writing like one book and playing one instrument, essentially, you're trying to write all these instruments. So even though this is X-Men and Avengers and Eternals, I'm still thinking about, okay, what does Doctor Doom think? What did the Fantastic Four think? You know what I mean? And also, what does this random one guy on the street corner in New York think? You know, and you're just trying to write this big sort of, I'm using the word social novel, but don't really mean that. The idea, you're trying to write society, and then you're going to write, there is an element of an event, what's the word? It's a disaster movie aspect to it.
Yeah,
there's definitely, for me, this event's got a very strong disaster movie, because if you think about like trying to be a normal human in a world of superheroes is a bit like being in a tornado. You know, like it's just dangerous being around these people. Especially when someone like the Eternals go to war. Like there's a bit where Druig pretty much says, and Druig's kind of trying to play the humans in issue 1. But he says, probably best you stay away from the coasts. You know, and that's that kind of like, you know, it's messy, it's enormous. And of course, Valerio makes it look, this is the best thing about Valerio, not the best thing, one of the best things, is that he draws these incredibly operatic, superheroic, infinite budget scenes, and then he draws the most convincing burritos. You know, like it's got to be, you know, you've got to have both, and that's what makes it real, and that's what makes the fantastic stuff more fantastical, because it's credible, and the ground is, you know, etc. etc. It's beautiful to work with him.
Oh, what a lovely endorsement. I mean, and you're absolutely right that the juxtaposition of the mythologically wild and the day-to-day inner city New York of it all, that's the lifeblood of the Marvel universe, right? And how lovely to tap into that. In terms of inspirations, I mean, obviously Infinity Gauntlet is massive, and I understand that. What are other classic pieces of Avengers, X-Men, Eternals history that speak to you, Kieron?
I mean, like, what's the most important stuff is kind of the recent stuff, because it's like it's coming out of the Krakoan age, and in some ways, this is the crossover when all the Krakoan stuff has been quite hermetically sealed. It's just been in the X books, and you've had other characters come in, and this is when it's explicitly it spills over. Like, and the X-Men have conquered Mars, and like, you know, most humans don't really care about if mutants on Mars, great, but when they've discovered that, you know, oh no, mutants now don't die, that's suddenly like a thing of real envy and jealousy, you know, and that's kind of like pretty much the inciting incident is that becoming public. So the recent stuff is what I go in, and there's Hoxpox. Let's talk about that. I mean, there's a couple of bits where I'm explicitly kind of doing what Jonathan did, the same sort of tone of these, kind of taking it very seriously, but also doing it in a much more blockbuster vibe. It's the best way of putting it. Then I got I was looking at the Mark and Hitch's First Ultimates, because one of the things that they did really interestingly then is they really grounded New York. They did stuff like splash pages of the city, like make it, and they were basically trying to make the superhero universe grounded again after years. And of course, this is what became the MCU. So looking back at that, and whilst not really tonally anything similar, the idea of, okay, these are useful techniques, I can use this. Hell, even like Secret Wars, the original one, you know, like there's something really, you know, like there's something really pure about Secret Wars, as an infinitely powerful being says,
oh man, yeah,
fight and get what you want. And that's like, it's nothing subtle about that, but there's something really pure about that. Yeah. And like the ability to like that, I mean, it's not really something that Secret Wars ever did, but it's kind of, because it's immediately they just fight. But if the question was more interesting, what would happen? You know? So there's that kind of influence as well. They're probably the main, they're the main things. But I very much looked at a lot of crossovers, just thought about it. You know what I mean? Like, what do I like? What do I not like? And especially because the other side, I mean, also how tie-ins work, because that's probably a good idea, because I think that for me, like the best tie-ins are ones that offer questions to the readers, as in like, not readers, sorry, the writers. So words like, instead of saying, oh, you have to do this, here's an opportunity for you. And I think about AVX, there was like really cool bits when I was writing tie-in and read, oh, wait, so there's rumors of being cool here. And there's definitely that in AVX, AXE rather. Like I did, actually, here's a good example. Let's use an example. Al Ewing and X-Men Red is doing astounding stuff. And it's kind of, I wrote this big epic in the first act, the X-Men versus Eternals War. And there's obviously some of that stuff on Arakko, as in Mars. And like, and he goes for it. You know, there's deliberately space there for him to do something cool. And he's took it and made something really poetic and horrible, utterly horrifying. You know what I mean? So basically, the main difference is crossover. The best kind of a crossover events are ones that kind of make all the books better. You know what I mean? As opposed to like being a weight that drags them. At least that's the hope anyway.
That's so interesting. Why do you think it is that it seems to me to be, especially for some reason, British writers like yourself and like Al, who have a particular affinity for the widescreen cosmicity of it all? Why do you think that is, Kieron?
I guess it's like, I don't know about like, you would have to ask Al, but I find that, and you might actually feel like this yourself, because in Britain, there's something really weird about American comics. You know, like they are alien. They're from a different, very much a different culture. Like, even seeing stuff like, you get people my age who talk about the adverts. You got adverts for toys which are never released in the UK, and you go, what the hell are these things? And also that they are literally quote unquote bigger. You know, like there's 20 pages, there's 20, 22 pages of comics, and we're used to 5-page stories because that's what we see them as. And so there is something like deliberately what the hell about it, and that's kind of like, I think it's kind of in there. And of course, a lot of it, I mean, for me, just kind of comes to the weird nature of what a crossover at an event is. Because it's like, it's not really like anything of a form of storytelling. And that's kind of that's why I'm on a writerly level quite excited about being the point person on an event, is just being able to play with that. Because the idea, okay, here's a one set story. And then I'm also writing a load of tie-ins. So I'm writing, I'm playing, I'm basically singing a melody, and I'm also singing counter melodies. And like, I'm also like, okay, there's basically 6 issues I write between issues 5 and 6, like between different books. And they're all basically, the plot goes like this and then brings it together. And the idea, okay, if you only read the main series, this will work as a story. But if you want more, I was thinking about events as fractal. The closer you get, and here's something interesting. Because an event is like the front pages of the Marvel Universe in some ways. And it definitely, I'm aware of, if I wasn't writing for Valerio, I'm not sure this would work, but I am, so it is.
You know what? I think that's so very well said. Who's your editor on the series, Kieron?
Tom Brevoort, who is actually the first time I've worked with Tom, actually, which is nice. Like, he's kind of taken over the Eternals, so he's my Eternals editor as well, but I've never worked with him. He's obviously like, I'm trying to think of all the best way. He is a living legend of editing. He's like the historical record at Marvel. He's like the spirit of Marvel Comics in some ways, I think. So, and he's got really, really strong story instincts. I mean, it's sort of like, having worked at Marvel for a while, I've heard a lot about Tom and what he's good at. So actually to be able to like be close to him and the assistant editors like Martin and Alyssa, is sorry, Annalise. Sorry about that. Who's Alyssa? No, someone else. Embarrassing. Sorry, editors, please carry on correcting my work. I need you. It's really good. And plus, on the other side of it, he gives me really good notes, as in, oh, this is a good idea. Also, maybe tweak this. He's also giving me a lot of rope. That's in terms of like, I don't feel really constrained. Like I'm saying, like when I'm saying I'm writing 6 times at this point, it's not like he said, no, don't do that, Kieron. He's like, oh no, that sounds reasonable. So like that's the really strong editing, and I just kind of, I hope it comes across in the final thing. It's like I'm pleased, especially issue 1 with it, which is the one which obviously comes out first. Issue 2 came out first, that'd be weirder. It feels tight and driven, and kind of what I would hope an event would be. It's kind of something to make people. The swagger of an event feels very real. Like you pick up issue 1 and stuff goes down. Let's do it. Bring it.
Mate, it's very exciting. One of the things that we're working on at Titan is a range of Marvel script to page books, and one of those is Avengers script to page, and I worked with Tom on the additional content for those, which is basically his DVD extras, if you will, and what I know therefore from the number of conversations I've had with Brevoort is just what a hugely impressive editor and Marvel brain he is, how erudite he is, and how carefully considered he is. And I think the ultimate compliment for yourself is the fact that he's selected you to write and create and do all of those spin-offs within this series. I think that's the supreme accolade, really, mate.
I think Chip did a joke about this in one of his news. Chip Starsky did a joke like basically any positive feedback from Tom is like love me, daddy.
I remember this, yes.
And Tom said some really nice stuff about me, which is nice. I do laugh. So the thing I always think about is like John Hickman saying, like when I pitched this in the Marvel room, Because I don't remember exactly what he said, but I remember his chuckle, and his thing was, yes, Kieron, once again, it was meant to be like 5 issues originally. It says, once again, Kieron, you've written 4 times as much as you actually need to. And it's like, yeah, he's right. But you know, it all fits, and that's the joy of an event. It's not just writing one book; it's writing the Marvel universe. Because that's the fact I'm doing like Deaths of the Mutants, which is basically an Eternals book, and Immortal X-Men as well. I was always aware that I can edit, as in this plot line, I can take and put in this book, and this, you know what I mean? It's a very different way of writing, and I'm, you know, and it's been weird, especially when, like, obviously I've just had a kid, and I've been running a Kickstarter for the Die RPG and stuff. So I'm doing a lot at the moment. But when I was like writing all these books, so it was really an intense, interesting period. Don't want to do it again, but like it's been really, really. You felt very febrile. You know, I felt on fire. There was definitely a bit when I was over empathizing with Tony Stark. You know, then that's never a good sign.
I think that is the perfect moment at which to wrap up and say to everybody, all of the books we've been discussing, Axe Judgment Day, all available for order from the links attached to our conversation. And I think from what I've seen of these books, everybody, if you're a dyed-in-the-wool Marvel fan like I am, of course, I think everybody's going to have a great time, and just more great Marvel work from you, brother, but more great work. You know, I think you're just having such an amazingly fertile period in your career at the moment, beautifully, on top of being a dad and all that kind of stuff as well. Just great. I mean, I think you're on fire at the moment, mate, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
That means, honestly, I'm really having so much fun. It's the kind of I do feel a bit on fire, and I mean, like, both in good and bad ways. But it's good. I'm enjoying it, and I just hope other people do too.
Yeah, I'm sure they are enjoying it. And you take care of yourself. I'll see you very soon.
I'll see you around. Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.